Hello, and thank you again for tuning in to Brandy Lloyd Personal Training and Holistic Nutrition. Today, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about how did we get here as a culture? How did we get to a place where chronic illness affects 1 in 3 people? How do we get to a place where obesity and diabetes and dementia and heart disease and cancer are on the rise, even though we've never been more educated and life has never been so easy? Why are we so stressed out? So basically what we're going to talk about is the beginning. I mean, like the beginning, not just your beginning. Every time I sit down with a new client, or I should say a prospective client, that's what I want to know from them. Is I need to know what I have to work with. I want to know what their health was like when they were a kid, a teenager, in their 20s, 30s, before babies, after babies. What has their eating been like? And what has changed? Because that helps me help them. Because everybody is, I call, a snowflake, right? We are all different. Our fingerprints are our health prints. And in my line of work, we call that bio-individuality, which simply means that a one-size-fits-all nutrition or strength program is just not going to work. There are some overlapping general things that are pretty much good for everybody. And we talk about that regularly on the podcast, like eating whole food, clean food, cutting out the sugars, getting rid of hydrogenated oils and high fructose corn syrup. And so we talk about those, moving every day is good for everybody, and stress management and proper sleep and hydration. Those are agreed upon across the board. But as I'm sitting with my new clients, I'm looking for lifestyle changes. I'm looking for stress and trauma, illness, and I'm looking for patterns in their life. Because what my goal is for my clients is usually what they would like. They would like their health restored. So if we really want to make a difference, and that's what I want to do, I want to make a difference to humankind. Yes, it begins with me and my family and my friends, and of course what I do for a living with my clients, but I want that to snowball. And I really am excited that I am part of this grassroots movement with food and health education. And so part of understanding where we are today and is understanding where we have been and how the slippery slope has actually thrown us down into what I would say definitely for this nation. And I do have listeners that are all around the world. And I'm so excited about that because it makes me feel like I'm actually really a part of something that can be and is global, and I'll be a helpful and healthy and positive voice of change. So let's go back to what I would call, and what most people would call, good health. When was there a time where people were actually well rested, they had healthy immune systems and lean bodies, and their bodies enjoyed lots of movement, and they lived a more communal lifestyle? They didn't have chronic disease and heart disease and blood sugar issues and hormone imbalances and stress and anxiety, and oh my gosh, the list just goes on and on. When was that time? A long time ago it was, but not as long as you would imagine. What would I call, or what would most nutrition professionals refer to as poor health? Well, I'll tell you what, if you're not experiencing enough sleep, if you have poor immune system function, obesity, if you're living a sedentary life, meaning you don't move around very much, if you're one of the 1 in 3 people walking around with chronic illness, heart disease, diabetes, hormone imbalances, anxiety, depression, if you're living more of an isolated lifestyle, mental illness, I would define all of that. Plus, the list goes on and on. Some of these are like little, you could put subcategories under each of these, cancer and whatnot. That would be defined as poor health. Well, I got to say, we had a pre-agricultural revolution or situation. And I want to put this out there. Most of you know that I am a Christian, and I do observe Christian beliefs in regards to of creation. But whether or not you believe in the earth being around for 1,000,000 years or whatever it is, or if you think the earth has only been around for 12,000 years, either way, Christians even go back and forth. We don't have any clear black and white words as far as the dating or time stamping on that. But just think about before an agricultural organization or revolution. People were mostly farming and hunting and providing for themselves, meaning that they ate locally. They weren't traveling 5,000 miles to get their food or having it like shipped in. They were farming, they were gathering and foraging what was around them. They hunted. This is before really domesticating animals for slaughter and so to speak. So we're gonna call that like a pre-agricultural revolution. Then what happened? We lived that way for an undetermined amount of time. Who knows? Literally, if somebody tells you they know how long that is, they don't know. They don't have any proof of it. And most of what we can gather from looking at skeletal remains is that the nutrients that were in the soil and in the foods were much more dense. Believe it or not, there are methods for like using nitrogen, and I'm trying to think what the other element is, for actually being able to determine from the bones quite a bit about the diet. I mean, even something like the mouth structure and straight teeth and wide arches in the mouth that can house all of the teeth, including your wisdom teeth, which most people have to get taken out today, and whether their teeth were straight or crooked. We imagine that even though their lifespan was shorter, it was more a situation of accidents. There's wild animals all over the place, not a lot of protection and shelter from these animals, so accidents, and not having the hospitals in place for acute care. But and also like the elements, starvation could have been an issue, or freezing to death, or roasting to death, or, running out of water. So typically they were outside forces. Our scientists are presuming that was the cause of most deaths during these first pre-agricultural revolution time. We got into the agricultural revolution by definition. Once we actually started farming, people lived less of an isolated lifestyle, and communities and more permanent settlements were starting to happen. Small towns, I don't even know if I want to say cities, but this is still a long, long time ago, and we're thinking 10, 12,000 years ago. Once we started farming repeatedly on soil, the skeletal remains that have been studied now are actually showing that the nutrition wasn't as dense, that there was a degradation in their health and the loss of bone density. And also, as far as looking at the habitat or our earth, loss of habitat and a soil degradation. And just like my husband makes salsa, his salsa is only as tasty as the tomatoes and peppers and the ingredients of the salsa. Same with our soil. Our food can only be nutrient dense if it is coming from a nutrient dense and life-giving soil. So we started seeing back in our soil samples that we can get, our scientists can get, we also saw a degradation. And then disease started spreading. I don't know if that has to do with the nutrition falling, or if it's just people living in closer proximity, if it was more of a sanitation issue, because towns and cities and these communal environments were new. We also started seeing social hierarchies and artisans. People were coming, you were a laborer, you were a farmer, or maybe you were a builder. We also started seeing things like slavery, right? And governments and different things forming during this time. The next phase, and I would love for you to picture kind of a sloping graph in your head if you could. And starting on the top, number 10, if we could go 0 on the bottom and 10 to the top would be good health. And poor health would be number 1 on the bottom. And when we were in that pre-agricultural time, let's imagine that as being an optimal health time for us and us being just humans on this earth. And then it slopes down a little bit, maybe to 7 or 8 for the agricultural revolution. Then we moved in. I want you to bring that dot down a little bit again, because there was the introduction around the 1600s of refined sugar. And refined sugar started happening. Only the wealthy and the elite could afford it. But then, as smart as we are, we found cheaper ways to grow sugar crops, and we decided to start cooking with it. I mean, let's face it, we have bitter, sweet, and sour. We also have, a pungent and astringent. I'm missing something bitter, sweet, sour. Oh, salty. Flavorful. And naturally, as humans, we kind of really like the sweet. I don't know if that is a created self-preservation taste bud to get some quick energy or needs of carbohydrates or whatever it is, but it's a really easy one to cater to. Unlike in my culture here in the United States, we don't eat a lot of bitter foods in the United States. As a matter of fact, I love cacao. And cacao all by itself is rather bitter. I also like chocolates that are really high in cacao and low in sugar, 85, 90% cacao. But typically people, they don't like the bitter. They cover it. We add more sugar to that cacao in making our chocolate bars or whatever it is. We can look back to that period of refined sugar. If you were lucky back in the 1700s, let's say 1600s, 1800s, you were lucky if you ate 1 to 3 pounds of sugar per year in your diet, refined sugar per year in your diet. And that during those couple hundred years, that changed not during those couple hundred years, to now, that has changed. The average American gets 200 to 250 pounds per refined sugar. Refined sugar. That, I can't even imagine. Can you imagine if somebody just delivered that to your kitchen January 1st and said, you need to have this eaten by the end of the year? Heck no. There's no way. I don't even know. It kind of makes me want to go out and get 200 pounds of sugar, pile it up, and just see what it looks like in those individual little 1 pounds, like the C&H that my mom used to get, when I grew up. That is daunting. It seems like absolutely ridiculous. However, when you look at all the crazy areas where we are now putting sugar, you can't buy ketchup hardly without sugar in it, or salad dressings, or salsa, something that is supposed to be spicy, now has sugar in it, right? So pastas have sugar in all of this sugar, and it's crazy. And we can look back at that refined sugar time around the 1600s and see this is the start of what is happening. Now, our genes are 99.9% the same as they were back when Eve was here, or Grok, whatever your belief system is, right? But we have scientists are showing and proving that the decisions and the lifestyle choices that you make in your body will affect future generations. I'll give you an example. Like, say diabetes runs in your family. Well, diabetes may run in your family genetically. The bullets may be in your gun, already preloaded for diabetes, but that doesn't mean that you're destined to have it. You can make lifestyle changes, dietary changes, stress changes, sleep changes, making sure you have your quiet time, get out and move your body, and you never have to pull that trigger, right? That would be one example of how your genes can load your gun, but it's up to you to pull the trigger. So I want to move on past the